Hey guys, what is up? My name is Landon and welcome to the Jersey Zone. So today I wanted to do a season preview for the Toronto Maple Leafs for the 2021-2022 season. Now I do quickly want to start off with some stats for last season. I'm not going to go super in depth. I'm not going to talk about it a ton. One, because I've already talked a little bit about last season on my channel already. And two, well, it kind of sucked. The ending of last season sucked a lot and I don't want to talk about it that much. So let's just quickly look at some stats for last season. So they finished 35, 14, and 7 on the season, making them first in the North Division. And they kind of dominated the North Division for pretty much the entire regular season, and there was only like a couple of times where you maybe saw someone challenge them for that first place. There was a couple of times that maybe Winnipeg was close and maybe Edmonton was close, but other than that, it was basically always the Maple Leafs. Now for their power play, they ended up at 20%, making them 16th in the league for power play percentage. Now the thing with the Leafs power play is it seems like every single season they start off extremely hot. They're like one of the best power plays in the league, if not the best power play in the league, and then after like 1 to 2 months it just falls off hard and it never really recovers, and that's something that they really need to work on for this upcoming season. They just have a really hard time adjusting. Once teams figure out how to stop them on that power play, that's something they really need to work on. And something else they need to work on as well is their penalty kill. They were 78.5% on their penalty kill, making them 24th in the league, which is not good enough as well. Those specialty teams numbers is something that really needs to improve for this season, especially that power play, I would say, because with the offense that the Leafs have, their power play should be at least a top 10 power play unit in the league, in my opinion. Now for their goals for, they ended up with 186, making them 6th place in the league, which makes a lot of sense. Like I said, with that offensive firepower, they should probably stay around that range. But for their goals against, they had 148, which came 7th place in the league. Now that may surprise some people, but if you watched the Leafs defense last year, you would have seen that they were really good last year. And I mean, it helped that also Campbell was a very good goaltender last season, but it's not like their goaltending was the reason that their goals against average was that low. I mean, like, Anderson really didn't play that well for most of the season, albeit he was injured, but he still was pretty bad in the games that he played. Hutchinson was pretty decent for most of the games he played. Riddick only played like 2 or 3 games, I think. He wasn't very good. It was mostly Campbell was the only good goaltender that really the Maple Leafs had for last season, but that defense for the Maple Leafs was really good last season. And the positive thing about that is their blue line has barely changed this offseason, so hopefully their defensive numbers kind of stay the same. And rounding out last year, obviously we all know they lost to the Montreal Canadiens in 7 games. We don't really need to talk about that much because, once again, like I said, I've talked about it a little bit on this channel already. Let's take a look at who they lost and who they brought in from this offseason here. Now looking at who they lost in the offseason, they lost Jared McCann to the Seattle Kraken, which he was just Seattle bait anyways. They literally just traded a 7th round pick and Philip Hollander, so they didn't have to lose anyone off the roster, which I think is probably a pretty smart move, honestly. And then they also lost guys like Galchenyuk, Thornton, Foligno, Bogosian as well, which I think are all replaceable guys. Galchenyuk definitely should be a replaceable guy. Thornton should be replaceable as well. Maybe not his locker room presence, but definitely his on-ice presence for sure. For Bogosian, I don't think they have really anyone that replaces what he does for like that 5th or 6th defenseman. You don't have like a big guy on the blue line that's gonna like smash into anyone. With Foligno, I think the biggest losses about that was the trade itself, losing all of those picks that they traded to try and get Foligno. I think it was a smart move at the time, but it just didn't work out, and obviously looking back at it now, it looks like an awful trade, and it didn't look like a great trade at the time. But I mean, if Foligno didn't get injured and you got past that first round and probably second round as well, maybe even third round, the trade doesn't look as bad. But obviously when you don't win a single round, it tends to look pretty bad. But their biggest losses for the offseason is definitely Zach Hyman and Frederik Andersen as well, although Andersen maybe a little bit less. With Freddie Andersen, he really did not play well the past 2 seasons. I do really like Freddie, but he was really bad, so I really don't think losing him is going to hurt the Leafs that much. But with Zach Hyman, though, that is a hard pill to swallow, man. I am so upset that they lost Zach Hyman. I am a huge Zach Hyman fan. He was one of my favorite Maple Leafs, and I'm really sad to see him go. I completely understand it, though. The Leafs really could not pay him that much to stay with the Maple Leafs, and I'm glad that he is getting his money in Edmonton, and I think the Oilers fans will really like him in Edmonton. He is such a hard worker. He really plays to the whistle every single shift, and he's really good in front of the net as well, so I'm definitely going to miss him this season. The Leafs are going to miss him as well. They didn't really have like a 1-for-1 replacement for Zach Hyman. They said they're going to try and replace him with Committee, which I think is probably the best move for the Maple Leafs. So let's take a look at who they got in the offseason here. Now, the Leafs did bring in a couple of big guys in the offseason, like Nick Richie and Curtis Gabriel as well. Now, with Gabriel, he has been waived, so he is probably just going to be a healthy scratch and get into only a couple of games. But with Nick Richie, he has a little bit more of an offensive upside, so right now it looks like he is going to play in the top 6 with Matthews and Marner as well, which hopefully is going to be a pretty decent line there. You're going to have Richie probably go into the corners, work hard in front of the net, get the puck to Matthews and Marner as well. They did also get David Kampf, which I didn't know a ton about before this offseason. I vaguely heard his name every now and again, but I really didn't know a ton about this player. But from what I've read from Blackhawk fans, it seems like he's going to be a pretty good defensive centerman for the Maple Leafs, which is going to be really key, especially on that penalty kill there. Like I talked about before, they definitely need to improve that penalty kill, so hopefully he can come in and kind of help them out a little bit there. Now for the firepower they brought in, they got Kasha and Michael Bunting, which with Kasha especially, it's going to be interesting to watch him because especially with the past 2 seasons, he's been injured a ton. I think he's only played 9 games in the past 2 seasons, which obviously is not a lot at all. But when he was in Anaheim, I actually really liked his game a lot, so it sucks that he's been injured so much in the past couple of seasons. So hopefully he's healthy. If he does stay healthy, I would probably say he gets around like 15 goals or something like that if he does play that full 82 game season. Now with Michael Bunting, it's also a little bit of a question mark. He's played really well in the preseason here. I think he got 5 goals or something like that in the preseason, 3 of them being a hat trick, so that is pretty promising. And also looking at his NHL numbers, he hasn't played a ton. Last season, he only played 21 games. He did get 10 goals in that 21 games though, so that's pretty impressive. But before that, he only played 5 games, so he's only had a total of 26 games in the NHL. A pretty small sample size, but so far he's looked really, really good in that sample size. Hopefully he can kind of keep that going. And then they replaced Anderson with Mrazek, which is something that I really liked a lot. I talked about this a little bit in my division preview for the Atlantic Division. If you guys want to check that out and you haven't seen it, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below, and I'll do like one of those video cards or something like that, so you can probably click up here as well. But in that video, I was saying I think I like the tandem a little bit more with Mrazek than I do with Anderson, mostly because of the fact that I think it just works a little bit better with a 1A, 1B type of situation with Mrazek and Campbell than it does with Anderson and Campbell. I think Anderson is probably going to be a little bit better as a starting goaltender than a 1A, 1B. Now that being said, he is probably going to be in a 1A, 1B type of situation in Carolina this year because he is playing with Antti Raanta, so that is most likely going to be a 1A, 1B type of situation, but I think this tandem probably just meshes together a little bit better. Maybe I'm wrong about that. We'll kind of have to see. And they signed a couple of more guys in the offseason, but they're mostly depth guys. Let's talk about the line combinations that I have for this upcoming season. For their first line, I have Richie, Matthews, and Marner. And with Richie, you can maybe replace him with Bunting as well. Kind of depends on the situation, but I have Richie there because it looks like that's probably the direction that they're going to go, at least for the start of the season. And like I was kind of talking about before, he's going to be that guy who's going to go into the corners, get the puck from Matthews and Marner, give it to them, and let them do their magic, sit in front of the net, kind of cause a havoc in front of the net as well. So I think that should be a pretty decent line for the first line there. For their second line, I have Mikheyev, Tavares, and then Nylander. Now that being said, as I'm recording right now, it looks like Mikheyev is probably going to be out for a little bit. We don't quite know how long he is going to be out. I think he's going to be evaluated today, actually, as I'm recording this. So I'm going to replace Mikheyev with Michael Bunting because I do want to keep Kerfoot on that third line. Speaking of the third line, I'm going to have Kerfoot, Kampf, and then Kasha. I think that is going to be a pretty good shutdown line, and you got a little bit of scoring in it as well with Kasha and Kerfoot as well. So I think that third line is pretty solid. And then for that fourth line, this is with Mikheyev out, so you're probably going to have like Engvall, Spezza, and then Simmons. And you can kind of switch out the wingers there, I would say, like Simmons switching with Gabriel, or like Engvall switching with Amadio, or maybe like Brooks or something like that. I think it really depends on the night and the cap as well. I haven't looked to see if like my roster is cap compliant or anything like that, so maybe it isn't. I got no idea. But yeah, I do really like that forward group. The left side is definitely the weakest part for that forward group, but that being said, I still think it's pretty decent. It's not the worst in the league, but it definitely could be improved on. Now let's look at their defense here. So you're obviously going to have a Riley-Brody pairing, which was really, really good last season. Riley had an awful year last year, but that pairing was actually pretty good because of TJ Brody. TJ Brody carried that pairing last season, but hopefully Riley does have a bounce back year this season. That being said, he was pretty good in the playoffs, even though they did lose. I thought he was one of their better players, so hopefully he kind of brings that to the season. For their second pair, you're going to have Muzzin and Hall, which is just a very good pairing. And then for that third pair, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do. I would assume you're going to go Sandin and Dermott. I think that's the way that you're going to go, because you would think that Sandin has got to get more minutes this year, right? Like, at this point, Sandin really does need to play. And speaking of a guy that really needs to play, Liljegren as well. He needs to show that he is ready, because it's kind of getting around the time where you need to prove if you're an NHL player or not. And right now, you're kind of iffy on it. So I would really like to see Liljegren step up and kind of play his way into Dermott's spot. That is my hope, at least. Even though I do like Travis Dermott, I would like to see Liljegren kind of take a step. And they also have Alex Biega as well as kind of like a 7th, 8th defenseman, something like that, in case someone gets injured. But I think this decor is pretty good. I mean, it's basically the exact same as last season's, and last season's was really, really good defensively, and I don't think people gave it enough credit. I think it was mostly just because of the fact that the seasons before, the Leafs defense was really, really bad, but last season, it was quite good, and like I said, they barely changed it this offseason here, so I'm pretty confident in it being a pretty good decor once again. And then like I was talking about before, you have Mrazek and Campbell as the goaltending tandem, which I think is going to be pretty good. You do have Michael Hutchinson as that third string goaltender, which he's probably going to get used this season because both Campbell and Mrazek have had injury issues in the past, so those might kind of creep up again. You might have to have Hutchinson as that backup goaltender for a little bit. And he played pretty decently last season in that position, so even if the Leafs have to go to him as a backup goaltender, I don't think it's going to hurt them. So what do the Leafs need to improve on for the season? It's definitely their specialty teams, because, man, those are really, really bad. Once that power play gets cold, it is dead in the water, and it does not come back. And that is something that they need to work on. They need to figure out a way to improvise and to adapt to the teams who kind of find a way to shut down that power play. Because after those first couple of months, it goes nowhere, and that is something they really need to work on, especially for the playoffs. That is really important for the playoffs, is to have a good power play. And I just find it so strange when you have a power play unit of Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Riley, 5 extremely offensive gifted guys, and it just doesn't score. It's just so confusing to me. I just really don't understand how they have such a hard time figuring out how to score on the power play. And once again, they also need to fix that penalty kill as well. That's something they do really need to work on. I would probably be a little bit more concerned with the penalty kill than the power play. I think the power play is maybe a little bit more mental than actually anything else. With the penalty kill, though, they really need to fix that up for sure. And another thing they need to work on, this is something that Sheldon Keefe talked about in that All or Nothing series on Amazon Prime. I'm probably going to talk about that in the next couple of days or so if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned. But something that he said in that series is the Leafs seem to take their foot off the pedal a little bit and let teams kind of crawl back and get back into the game before finally finishing them off and only winning by like 1 or 2 goals, when they probably should have closed the game out a lot earlier. And he said they're also a little bit of a fragile team as well, which I completely agree with. I mean, you look at the playoffs, there's something like in between their heads where they just can't function and can't close out games. It is so strange, but that is something they really need to figure out for sure. Now, taking a look at where I think the Leafs are going to finish this season in their division, like I said, I did talk a little bit about this in my Atlantic Division predictions, but I think the Leafs are going to finish first place in the Atlantic Division. I think the Leafs are that good of a regular season team, but I don't think any Leaf fan cares right now about the regular season. I don't think a lot of them care about the regular season at all. They just care about what's going to happen in the playoffs. And where do I have the Leafs going in the postseason here? Nowhere. I do not believe that they're going to win a round until I actually see it with my own eyes, because from what I've seen, they just can't do it. They choke those game 7s. If they have a lead in the series, they'll choke that as well. They just don't know how to close out a series, so until I see it with my own eyes, I don't have them winning a single series. And with my standing predictions, who do I have the Leafs facing in the first round? It's the Boston Bruins once again, so I hope my predictions don't come true, because I don't want to face the Boston Bruins again in the first round, because it sucks. It is not fun, and they would lose again in the first round if that happens. I truly, truly believe that. If the Leafs face the Boston Bruins in the first round, they're probably going to lose. But anyways, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and if you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to follow me on my Instagram and my Twitter, at the Jersey Zone YT on Instagram, and at the Jersey Zone on Twitter. Links are in the description down below. But like I said, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.